Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put my headphones in. I forgot to put them in. I decided to go live a little bit early this morning because it is Larissa's birthday. And so wanted to go ahead and get going. And it looks like one person has joined already. If you are watching this over, please feel free to leave any comments in the comment section. And I'm probably going to wait and see if any more people come on, and then give people a little reminder to give any feedback and comments in the live chat as it goes. But definitely want to make this as interactive as I can. I think it's just more fun that way. So it is Saturday morning, just before 9 o'clock on June 27th. Larissa and I ended up getting back super late last night, a lot later than I thought we were going to last night, and just kind of wound the day down early and woke up and got going, and we'll do this and then find some fun ways to celebrate her birthday. So anyways, thought I'd go ahead and get going with this. I think that was all I really wanted to cover right off the bat. Just please leave comments, say hello even. I do this live for the potential and the accessibility for interaction. And otherwise I would just record these and post them up, but I like keeping it open for people that want to wake up and have some coffee and kind of process through what is life. What is it like to be a human? Maybe other topics too. I wonder if this, it says one person's on, if it's actually talking about me. That would be really funny. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and draw from the hat. See what we come up with today. Yesterday, when I went and had my friend David color Larissa's hair, it turned into a day-long kind of just banter back and forth, similar to what I'm doing here, just with David, which is always fun. It may not have been as fun for Larissa, but she chimed in. All right. Johnny sent me a few, so I'll put his name actually back in the hat. So Johnny's main thing, I should have actually texted him to see if he'd be okay with me reading it, but he lives in Seattle, kind of in Seattle proper, in the city, and he was reflecting on the experience of living there and everything that's actually going on, not necessarily what the way the media is portraying it, but the actual context of what's happening there and the challenges of being a white male and knowing how to respond with wisdom and dignity and, all these different things. I think for everyone right now, but for someone who is a white male who has a certain level of awareness, even a little bit of an awareness for kind of the time in history that we're entering into as having the skin on, having an awareness of what that means and what that's meant, and then having a genuine desire to be caring and wise and thoughtful with your actions, you can start to realize that there's a lot of landmines. I think there's a lot of landmines for everyone, but if you want to be thoughtful about it, I think part of it is acknowledging that those are there. So I kind of broke his questions up into a few points. My notes is freezing up on me. Yeah, so the first thing was like just responding wisely in general and thoughtfully, and then what's it like to keep ourselves in check and knowing when to speak up and how to speak up. And interestingly enough, my friend David brought the same thing up in some conversations he's been having with some people close to him. And he wasn't really approaching it from the context, maybe the context of a man, but not a white man understanding that he has a kind of position of privilege in our society. He has typically afforded for him more opportunities, and his voice is typically related to in a different way, in a way that's more listened to and respected, which is not how it should be. But I think wisdom will always say first to show up for what is, just the way things are. And I think the challenge right now, as far as choosing a wise path, is to be able to take a moment to step back and ask the question, what does it look like to just, for a moment at least, just accept what is without adding any stories to it? And letting other stories kind of come in and crowd out what's happening. And that can be really challenging. Especially for people that are experiencing a lot of pain and have been experiencing a lot of pain around this subject for a long time. But speaking from the perspective of a white male, this is something that I think we need to be careful. We need to be careful in how we're engaging with using our voice. The thing that concerns me the most is that if we're not careful and thoughtful and mindful, our our movements towards activism or speaking out can be to kind of cope with our own anxiety and shame around what's happening and the role that kind of our ancestors have typically played and that we come into this whole mix with. And if we're not careful without really meaning to, I think we can end up using people that are being oppressed and using kind of the activity of helping in whatever way that occurs, and helping them to make us feel better about ourselves and about the predicament that we're in, and to kind of have this knee-jerk response to fix or to stand up and not even realize, I don't think it's done intentionally, but not even realize that we're actually not dignifying the people that we're with, and or the people that we're hoping to dignify. So that's I think something to at least sit with and sit on. And I should clarify, that's something I think we should do. I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything else other than that. I just think that might be the most sustainably wise decision, kind of in the long term. If we can sit with those feelings of like, what does it look like to start to dignify and in the long term empower these groups of people that have not had the capacity to flourish in our nation, in our communities. What are some of the most effective ways we can do that? And I think that's a more wise and thoughtful and slower, a little bit slower, but important process than anything else that we would do. But I'm definitely not discouraging against any of the rest of that. I think all of it's important. So that would be my first response. And then I would say the next important thing is to be in constant check of our posture. There's a lot of energy going around right now that, if we're not careful, will draw us into this really tight, rigid, hateful posture that is creating a us and them scenario, and is creating a kind of atmosphere where we shrink the conversation into a black and white situation. And when we do that, it can be really helpful to deal with problems right away. But what can tend to happen when we do that is we aren't able to look at the kind of long-term results of our actions in the short term. And we're in that fight or flight place that puts us in. We're just, our kind of main thing is just to fight what's right in front of us, not realizing that the real desires that we have in heart in this situation for long-term social change, to see long-term these people, that this people group, and really ultimately it's multiple people groups that haven't been able to thrive in our society and have been systemically oppressed, for that to happen. And if we're not careful when we make those really reactive decisions in the short term, whatever they are, they're not going to produce typically, and typically they won't produce the desired outcomes that we want in the future. And again, I'm not really, if you kind of read into what I'm saying, you can, assume that I'm saying to do or not do things. And I'm talking about posture. I'm really talking about the importance of, like, whatever we do or don't do, doing our best to maintain a posture of ease, to come into the situation as disarmed as we can. And that doesn't mean we don't still have a heart that aches for change, and carries a hope for better tomorrows, and better outcomes for the situation. And but we have to know and understand that there's a lot of moving pieces involved, and going to the extremes and staying in the extremes is really never going to produce the long-term results that we want. So I would say posture would kind of be the second one. And then this will probably be a much longer topic, this topic of listening. I think Elliot put it in his, but as far as what we can be doing right now, I don't think there's anything that's going to be more effective than learning how to listen really well. And I don't just mean like listening to the news, or even listening to the people that are right in front of us. And I think both are really important, and we have to be careful about both of those things. But even listening to, being able to kind of zoom out and listen to what's happening in our nation. And I think the challenge in listening is, a lot of times, if we're not careful, actually, I think pretty much every time, to a degree, we come into a situation that we're listening to with our own lenses, with our own perspectives on, and our own stories about right and wrong, just and unjust, our fixed views on politics or religion, or all these things. And those keep us from listening well if we don't know how to hold them open-handed. I'm not saying we just throw them away, because I think there's an importance of crafting our worldview in a really intentional way, and then going into situations with that worldview. I don't think we need to just do away with our own worldview, but if we're not careful, we'll get into this really combative space that may not even exist in the conversations, but actually it exists in our minds, which keep us from being able to really listen to the person in front of us, sort through what's happening kind of in the media, and then even larger scale, really kind of hear the heartbeat of what's going on in our country. If we're laying a lot of ideology and feelings onto the current landscape of our culture, it's going to be really challenging for us to really truly listen to what's happening, and whether it's the person in front of us, whether it's the media, whether it's our family, whether it's the voice of the people that are oppressed. Me and my sister are both, we both tend to be much more on the land politically, more on the side of the kind of liberal and conservative ideology, and then our parents are much more on the side of the kind of conservative perspective. And if we're not careful, we will have no capacity to listen to each other, like zero. And we may sit and hear what they have to say, but we're not thinking about it. We're not understanding them, because we're so tight grasped on our fixed views about the way things should be and the way things are. And we won't have much of an ability to really listen to each other. And there was, I hope it's okay that I'm saying this, but there was a season, especially in the beginning of the Trump era, where, I'll speak for myself. I had a really, really, really hard time listening. I think our whole family did, or I think our parents probably did a better job than we probably did. I don't know, my sister's pretty good about it, but it was a situation that was so polarizing in our family that the thing that was highlighted the most to me, and still has been highlighted most, is my personal inability to listen. And so that's been the thing I've been the most thankful about with the Trump presidency in my own life, has been how it's revealed these parts of my hearts where I've held so tightly to my perspective on things that I haven't been able to fully listen to the perspectives of my parents and maintain a connection with them in the meantime, and have really generative conversations. So yeah, I hope that helps in understanding this whole perspective of listening. This is probably the most crucial time in the 33 years I've been alive to develop this practice of deep listening. And the first thing we have to do is notice the things that we cling really tightly to, as far as ideology and beliefs and feelings, and not push them away for the sake of the conversation, but just hold them open. And maybe practice suspending them for a little while, just to listen to the perspectives and get into the world of the other person. And that doesn't mean we need to take on all of their beliefs and all of those, but just try to get into their world and understand the way that they're seeing and thinking about things, instead of trying to convert them into our way of perceiving reality and understanding things and believing a certain way. If we can learn to do that as a country, everything would change. The whole quality of the conversation would change, and we would be able to get things done so much quicker. And there's a lot of different elements to our culture right now that are kind of fighting against us really listening to each other. So yeah, I would say that would be that. As far as doing, I think that's probably the most important thing. So a practical thing for a white man to do would be to read Black literature. Black literature on racism, on systemic racism. Listen to Black voices on systemic racism that have put things out. Do your own research. If you genuinely care enough to go to a protest, I would hope you would care enough to really learn and listen. If you have a Black friend that is offering to educate you, definitely listen. I would not call them up and, be like, educate me on this. This is our responsibility. This is something that we've kind of had a privilege to not look at and listen to. And it's actually been to our detriment, because as a human race, when we separate ourselves off from any part of humanity or the world, like, we will suffer. Like, it's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if we will, it's a matter of when. Like, it's really easy to see too. So not spending the time to understand the history and the things that have happened and the way they're still happening is actually hurting ourselves. And I know I had, when I was first clued into kind of the depth of where we are at, it was probably about 5 years ago. And I had some really amazing friendships in Atlanta with some Black friends. And there were conversations that I realized we hadn't had, and I knew them really well. Conversations about their family, conversations about their background. I didn't even need to get into a conversation with them about racism. But it was really sad for me to see that there were so many opportunities I had to dignify them in my relationship with them that I had not moved into. And they weren't going to force that part of their life on me. So if you already, have those people in your life, and not just the Black community, any kind of other people group, friends that you have that are in other cultures that may not have the capacity and may have a very different life experience than you've had, and you just didn't even realize it. I would say, and again, this is a question from that was posed, or a topic that was posed from Johnny, and we're both white men in our 30s, really wrestling with what does it look like to be really compassionate and thoughtful about this. So I'm kind of directing it towards that people group, and also trying to stay as broad as possible so it can be approachable from any perspective. But that was something that was really generative to me right away, is to just start to have these conversations that were really dignifying to the people in my life that were on the fringes in certain kinds of ways and did have a very different story than I had growing up. And to hear that and understand that. But there's so much good literature out there to read and understand. And if you're, I do know, Siri keeps popping up. I do know that if you are involved in Christianity at all, or interested in it, I'm not practicing right now, anyways. I've been really enjoying being involved in Buddhist community, but if you are, and that's something that's really important to you, and the reason I bring this up because the majority of people in America have been impacted to some degree by Christian thought. There's this type of theology called Black liberation theology, which is kind of interpreting the scripture through the lens of the Black community. And it's a completely different take on the Bible. And it's in some ways kind of opposite from the white evangelical culture and the way that they've interpreted the Gospels and the Bible. And it's really beautiful. It's worth reading about, understanding, for someone that's a practicing Christian, that can be kind of a really quick first easy way to connect with the Black community and to start to dignify this people group in a really tangible way. So those were some things I thought about in response to your question, Johnny. Let's see, responding is wisely, thoughtfully, keeping ourselves in check, knowing when to speak up and how to speak up. Yeah, so I'll land the plane on how to use our voice. I think the first important thing is posture. Once we've checked our posture, I like this whole like checking ourselves. Once we've checked our posture and kind of asked the questions like, am I coming at this from a heart of humility, compassion, dignity? And then once we've made the at least effort to listen well, then I think the next question is like, if I'm going to use my voice, how do I say this? Okay. What's going to be my best guess at what the impact that my voice is going to have on the people that are going to hear it? And we can't fully know that, but at least taking the time to sit with it and make our best kind of guess and assumption, and then decide what we're going to say based on that. Great example, what I just did. And instead of like trying to say impulsively the first thing that came to my mind about even how to use our voice, I said, I'm not sure if that's going to elicit the kind of result, and people are going to hear that and take it and then embody it in a way that is in the way that I'm understanding it kind of in my mind. So taking a moment to kind of step back and say, like, I'm going to use my voice in this way. I've already kind of gone through these other stages of posture and then listening, and then from that place kind of reflecting and saying, like, I'm going to use my voice in this way. I'm going to choose to post this on social media. I'm going to choose to talk about this like I am on a YouTube video. I'm going to make the choice to speak up in a group of people. I'm going to make a choice to share my perspective in a conversation with a loved one, whatever it is. If we can take even just a moment, and sometimes we have the capacity to take way more than a moment, but even just a moment to reflect and say, is what I'm about to say, what kind of an impact do I think it's going to have? And is that an impact that I want it to have? And if you feel good about it, or even I would say like halfway good, just do your best. I think we need we also need to let ourselves off the hook. Maybe that's probably the best place to land the plane, is like, we can do our best, but then our best needs to be enough, and it needs to be okay that it's not perfect. um, and yeah, I'll just kind of finish with that. Like, those are things that I think, if we put into practice, can be really transformative in the way that we engage with all of this, especially as a white man. Um, but at the end of the day, if we're making our best effort, and we're constantly reflecting on the impact of our effort and how that's going, and wanting to practice um, more wise dialogue and more intentional activism, we gotta be willing to get it wrong sometimes, and learn from it, and move forward, and not put this heavy trip on ourselves that if we're not doing all of the right perfect things, then we're this terrible person and we're the problem with society. um, I think that's a really damaging perspective, and it's a really heavy weight to put on a person. And it will lead to eventually inactivity. It will actually stifle out the longevity of really pure transformative activism, and it will lead to burnout. So if we can really be generous with ourselves in this process of learning and growing, I think it'll be really helpful. So I'll end there. This was kind of a cool experience where there might have been one person on the whole time, so I was talking to no one. But it'll be up for people to view and call me out if I missed something that you feel like needed to be there, or you disagree with me. That's also fine. Or you want to add to the perspective, please leave it in the comments. And I don't think there's a ton of people that know about this video, so I don't think it will end in some crazy conversations, really long ones, but I'll do my best to respond to any of the comments, at least the day after. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for caring enough to engage with the topic and the dialogue, and hope you have a beautiful day. If you know Larissa, reach out to her, send her a text, shoot her a phone call, FaceTime her. I don't think she'll pick up your FaceTime call, but maybe she will. And yeah, just have a beautiful day. And please give me feedback on all of this. I'm learning and growing, and having a desire to constantly have dialogue about this and listen to people's perspectives on it. So please let me know. And I think that's it. Have a beautiful day.